This is Dr. Toby Capwell, curator, author, historical advisor, and all-round expert on historical arms and armour. And I'm your host, Dave Jewett, and today we're breaking down a selection of armour from a variety of movies, including A Knight's Tale, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Kingdom of Heaven, and more.
It seems crazy to say, but the knights themselves, within reason, and comparatively speaking, they look pretty good. What is that? Where did that ever come from? Who thought that was a good idea? All the other actors are saying, why do we all have better helmets than the star?
There is a longer, deeper director's cut edition of this episode over on our Patreon, so be sure to check that out for more of Dr. Capwell's musings. We'll have more videos featuring Toby to come very soon, so make sure you stick around for that and check the links in the description below to find out more on Toby's book, An Armourer's Album. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and without further ado, I'll throw it over to Toby.
I went and saw this in the cinema somewhat reluctantly, but I felt that I was professionally bound to know what this film was. And I went in with pretty low expectations. But I was actually pleasantly surprised in some ways. I mean, it's terrible in a lot of ways, but it's great in a lot of ways too. You know, just in here, for example, it's a major story element that his armor, this new armor that she's making for him, is of a good quality, and it's high tech because it's light.
It's too small. It's too light.
He'll be crushed.
You know, the idea of saying this is a great armor because it's light and still protects you. I mean, when has a film ever said that? But that's the reality. In the 15th century, Pietro Monti, master of arms, Spanish or possibly Italian master of arms, he said that the best armor is made in Innsbruck in Austria because they have the best metal and the armor can be thinner and lighter and still strong. You know, that's real. And he says, can this protect me enough? It feels too light. But that's good armor. Good armor shouldn't encumber you. That was a refreshing thing to see in a feature film. And there's a lot of other story elements in this film that clearly are lifted straight from medieval literature. And that shows me that somebody cracked a book when they were writing the script. Somebody did some homework. They might have then gone on and made choices that I wouldn't have made. And they give in to the temptation for the cheap gag here and there. But overall, there's more good in it than I might have expected. It states that it's set in the 14th century during the 100 Years' War. They refer to the Battle of Poitiers at one point, so that places the film in the 1350s. But there's no attempt at all anywhere to replicate the appearance of the 1350s. And I think that's a bit of a shame because it's a good story, well acted and told in a charming way. But how much better could that conceit have been? The conceit of sort of modern storytelling and modern characterization in a historical environment. How much better could that have been if it was actually done historically? Because of course the armor, there's a lot of plate armor in here, but it's all over the place in time period. The late 15th century, early 15th century, late 16th century, early 16th century. It's just thrown in every which way. It's like if you made a movie about fighter pilots and you put a Sopwith Camel in there, you put an F-16 in there, a couple of Spitfires, you know, maybe a F-35 turns up at the end. I mean, people wouldn't accept that. And it's sort of annoying that we're expected to take this. But it's also an interesting meditation on how, you know, a charming story can transcend.
Well, I always thought the Nike swooshes on the armor was just obviously it's just a visual gag of this new lightweight armor. Gag, yeah. But when I was looking up details about the film, I learned that the founder of Nike is named Phil Knight.
Oh, yeah?
Which, I mean, I hope that was on purpose. If not,
I don't think it was. I think I would rather believe that somebody heard about the real practice of armorers marking their work. You know, they stamp their work with a mark that's got their initials on it under a cross or whatever. I'd rather think that they heard about that and thought they'd make it into a joke. But I don't know where that came from. The jousting in this film is shot very well. The angles are good. The editing is very good. The sense of the three phases of a joust: approach, impact, and finish. That's all nice. The lance technique is terrible. You never, a real jouster, a real knight never gallops along with the lance leveled like that. And to do that, you can see them standing up in the stirrups to keep their lance straight, and it's really not at all how it should be done.
I mean, a big plot point in this is that one of the knights cheated. Is that something that has happened before historically, or there's been evidence of cheating jousts?
Not really. It's not really possible to cheat in a joust, although the improper use of a sharp spear point is a real thing. This is something I mentioned in my book about Arms and Armor of the Joust, that there is a 13th century account of a fatality in a joust where they say that the jouster was killed because the lance that struck him was not blunted as it ought to have been. And that's in an early period where the spearheads, they're single pointed, they're just blunted. But from more than 10 feet away, it's kind of hard to tell which is a jousting point and which is a war point. And it's possible that they just got mixed up, but what was a war point doing on the field anyway? You could imagine that someone brought one in, as in the film, to cause malicious injury. And it's possible that the scriptwriter read about that. It's documented in most of the tournament book literature. It's mentioned because it's one of the earliest references to blunt heads being used in jousts. But that's my point again, is that a lot of this, the thing I like about the movie is that a lot of its plot points are derived from real history. It's just a mishmash.
If you want even more breakdowns featuring Dr. Capwell, then make sure you check out our Patreon. Over there you can find over 70 extended Director's Cut episodes from a variety of experts, and even more Patreon exclusive content, and even EXP Discord access. Becoming an EXP patron helps to support the channel, allows us to bring in our wonderful experts, and lets us continue to make cool content like this. But whether you join our Patreon or watch along on YouTube, I want to say thank you for your support, thank you for being here, and now I'll get back to the video.
Yeah, benefiting from the mail-making innovations of Lord of the Rings, making real mail out of plastic links. You now see the benefit of that in a historical epic where the mail is plastic and it's hung on elastic, so it fits better to the actors without being especially well tailored. But it's an improvement over what we used to have. You have one character there wearing a sort of 15th century Turkish helmet, which is several hundred years too late, but I think they're trying to, make a character thing out of a knight who's been fighting in the Middle East and ended up with a helmet from the other side. It's kind of an interesting idea, but it's the wrong period. There's a laudable effort here to show some cavalry tactics in the maneuver, and that's certainly one thing that was developing very rapidly in the 12th century were heavy cavalry tactics. As there's a fundamental shift in the 12th century from thinking about the horse as a mode of transport that gets you to the enemy so you can throw something at them or shoot something at them and then get away very quickly. That's how the Romans used heavy cavalry. That's how the Normans at Hastings used heavy cavalry. And then there's this shift right around 1100, right around the time of the First Crusade. What we're seeing here is events that occurred after the Second Crusade, or between the Second and Third Crusades, where they decide rather than a mode of rapid transport to the enemy, we can use the horse as a weapon. Norman knights of this period who, an informed expert colleague of mine has fittingly referred to as nutters, realized that if you crash, you just crash your cavalry straight through your enemy formation, and you can use heavy cavalry to break enemy formations apart rather than just as a delivery device for weapons, ranged weapons. You can really achieve great things. And so heavy cavalry maneuver along those lines using convoy or squadrons of cavalry who are trained to work closely together in close formations is something that was really developing very quickly during the Crusades. Although it's always based on, Roman military precedent. So it's kind of nice that they gave you a few wide shots to kind of give a sense that the knights are not just charging off individually, they're trying to work as a coherent squadron. Again, it's like what the filmmakers thought looked Muslim or Saracen-y or whatever. But there's hundreds of years out of date here, which is kind of annoying. But there's some nice group shots of things. If you look closely, there's a view at one point. Oh yeah, the True Cross. They have the True Cross in the Crusader army. And the True Cross that Jesus was crucified on was believed to have been found during the First Crusade, and it was carried in front of Crusader armies until it was captured by the Muslims at the Battle of Hattin, which is sort of referred to in the film. But to see a representation of what these medieval people believed to be the True Cross covered in gold and things is again a nice detail. Someone who was capable of reading a book had suggested, and it actually made it through the production meetings. Again, I'm not a big fan of color coding medieval armies. The whole Crusader army here has to be all blue so we can tell who they are. I dislike that, but...
Weirdly, King Baldwin became a bit of a meme recently.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know why. All of a sudden I just started seeing pictures of King Baldwin raising his hand to quiet a room appearing all over social media.
Who knows what rules govern the universe of memes?
Anyone here been in the army? Yes. I'll start with you a bit about it.
Less said about that helmet, the better. What is that? Where did that ever come from? Who thought that was a good idea? All the other actors are saying, why do we all have better helmets than the star?
Because it's not based on anything historic, is it?
This film is basically a remake of Fall of the Roman Empire. The film in the, when was it made, 50s, early 60s? The whole story of Commodus and the emperor who fights as a gladiator and the Roman general who is deposed and debased. It's all in that Fall of the Roman Empire. Go watch that and you'll see where this one came from. It's basically a remake of that film. I mean, one thing that this does give you a vague sense of is the Romans' desire for exoticism in the gladiatorial combats and spectacles in the Colosseum. That having different sides dress up like different people from different parts of the empire, Amazons versus Samnites or whatever. That kind of theatricality is very much what, Roman Colosseum combat was about. But
all right, in saying that death in the Colosseum wouldn't be the norm either. There was a desire to keep gladiators alive so they could earn more money and create more spectacle.
It depends. I think. I'm not the expert on gladiators or even Romans, but my sense of the presence of fatalities and the lethality of the combat depended on the status of the event and the status of the audience. If it's a very high status audience, you'd expect death. But good gladiators were celebrities and people followed them, and it's part of the culture, and you don't kill them without a good reason. But there was plenty of real death and real violence in spectacles in the Colosseum. The Roman mask helmet is a real thing. That's copied from Roman cavalry helmets, especially helmets worn in cavalry spectacles. Roman tournaments, effectively. They had a number of these real Roman mask helmets survive. But They're not something that was habitually worn in real warfare.
I always felt sorry for the lions or the tigers or other animals.
Yeah, I know what you mean. This almost feels, you know what this film feels like to me, though? Rather than any sort of reconstruction or evocation of real Roman history, it always felt to me like some kind of reenactment of sword and sandals movies from the golden age of Hollywood or something. It's almost like a copy of a reconstruction or something, you know? It reminds me much more of Roman epics of the 50s than it does of anything real. Film that still looms very large in just about anyone's conception of the Middle Ages. This two-handed sword fight, I remember seeing this as a kid and thinking, this is actually really good in some ways. There's a wonderful back and forth and a kind of physicality of it. And the way the fight flows is kind of nice. But the historical advisor on this film, and yes, they did have a historical advisor, was John Waller, who was a teacher of mine in the early 90s and teacher of many other people too. He was a fight director. He was an archer of incredible skill. And John Waller founded the Medieval Society, one of the earliest living history groups in the 1960s, who were jousting in full plate armor long time before really anybody else. And John did a lot of work as a historical advisor in British films in the 1970s and 80s. And he later became the head of live interpretation at the Royal Armouries when the Armouries first moved up to Leeds. And so he was my boss when I first worked there. So there's a sort of vague personal connection that I feel with this film. But because John worked on this, you know, and he's working with a very low budget and a very short production time with this film. But the night, I mean, it seems crazy to say, but the knights themselves, within reason, and comparatively speaking, they look pretty good. A lot of the mail is the knitted string mail, you know, spray painted silver or gold. But Graham Chapman's got a real mail aventail there. They've got nice looking surcoats with the heraldic devices. And the use of heraldry in this film is really worth paying some attention to. They do a lot of interesting things with it, in part because of, I think, John's influence on the design, but also just because the Pythons themselves had, you know, perfectly good historical awareness of their own. It's a very extreme form of satire, but there's some good medieval stuff in here. And this whole thing about the chopping the arms and legs off and he still keeps going, I mean, that's a motif in medieval literature, that part of the superhuman character of the knight is that he can suffer terrible physical punishment and he can be watering the grass with his blood, but he still keeps going. He can suffer more than an ordinary human. And the suffering is an emulation of the suffering of Christ too. It's a Christian process. So they're obviously making a bit of a joke out of it. But again, all I care about, ultimately, is the homework and the awareness of reality and the regard for reality, and not just randomly making crap up off the top of your head.
All right, we'll call it a draw.
This movie is memorable. It's a cultural moment, in part because it's perfectly aware of the real Middle Ages. You know, it's mischaracterizing it in all kinds of ways, of course, but there's some stuff in here that's particularly funny if you understand the knightly mindset and you can kind of see it from their point of view. Yeah, Lancelot du Lac. This is a film made in the early 70s. It's not very well known now, and it's very much not your typical knight movie. And that's part of what makes it interesting and worth checking out from the point of view of cinema history. It's basically a meditation on vainglory and on the glorification of violence and brutality, you know, the implications of chivalry. It basically says, if we take the glamour and the romance away, what are you left with? on the one hand, you've got knights in cinema terms, pretty good metal plate armor. They try to make it as unglamorous as possible and take the veneer, the PR, take the PR out of chivalry. What then are the implications of the real behavior? Who are these people really? And it's an interesting film because it kind of rejects the usual knightly tropes. Films follow a lot of the same rules as medieval literature, the glamorous, heightened, turned up to 11 action, adventure, magic, sorcery, fantasy story. What if you take all that away? The round table in this movie is just a piece of big wooden furniture in an empty room, and there's nothing glamorous about it at all. And when they shoot a joust, you notice that the focus of the camera, the framing, what the filmmakers show you and what they deny the viewer is very interesting. They usually don't let you see what you expect to see, or they don't show you what you want to be shown. There's a lot of views of people's feet and the ground, and really, it subverts a lot of expectations.
Thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes featuring Dr. Capwell. As always, a massive shout out to all of our supporters over on the EXP Patreon for helping make episodes like this possible. We've got more videos featuring Toby to come in the future, but by all means, let us know what you'd like to see Dr. Capwell break down in future videos. Once more, like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to EXP so you don't miss out on future content, but until next episode, thank you again for watching, and I will see you very soon.
Whatever comes out of these gates, we've got a better chance of survival if we work together.